I was accused of theft by the man I loved, so he could protect the girl who replaced me. In my past life, that lie ruined everything. My exams, my future, and eventually my life. But this time, I'll quietly rewrite the ending they stole, and when the truth comes out, they'll wish I had stayed dead. Great. Let's begin the full expansion of the day I took back my future, using all new character names and keeping each part as a direct continuation of the previous one. The story will remain faithful to the original structure. No merging, and every part builds off the last. My name is Lila Dawson. 3 months before the college entrance exams, I opened my eyes to the cold tile of a familiar bedroom, one I shouldn't have been in anymore. The calendar read March. My hands trembled. I was alive. In my past life, March was the month everything began to collapse. Blake Carter, my fiancé, had accused me of theft. Of stealing a watch that didn't belong to me. A lie orchestrated to clear the path for him to be with Kelsey Monroe, the girl he brought home with a smile and said was just staying for a few nights. I had believed him. Believed them. And I paid for it with my future. I failed my exams, lost my scholarship, and eventually my life, in a crash I now knew wasn't an accident. But this time, I was reborn 3 months before the nightmare. This time I wasn't clinging to Blake. I wasn't pretending everything would magically work out. I wasn't going to beg anyone to stay. I opened my laptop and stared at the university portal. In my previous life, I had followed Blake to Westwood University. But this time, I calmly deleted that option and chose Crestfield University instead. It wasn't revenge yet. This was correction. A soft knock on the door pulled me back. Lila. It was Olivia Carter, Blake's mother, the woman who had raised me after my parents died. Do you want waffles? No thank you, I said gently. I'm going to study. It was still early. No one knew what I was planning yet. I wouldn't fight them the same way I had last time. I wouldn't shout. I wouldn't cry. I would quietly walk away, and let them rot in the silence I left behind. The next morning I packed a box. Not all of it. Not yet. Just enough to start. The villa was too quiet. Blake had gone back to campus for the weekend, which meant Kelsey wouldn't be far behind. In my last life I had cooked for them, smiled through dinners, watched as she wore my slippers and used my perfume. I had told myself it was temporary. That I was the one with the ring. The one Olivia called her daughter. What a joke. I folded a sweater and placed it in the box, then another, careful not to make noise. Olivia passed by the room, peeking in with a smile. Sweetheart, you're up early. Are you okay? I'm fine, I said. Just organizing before exams. She nodded, clearly proud of my supposed diligence. She didn't notice the empty space in my closet. Or maybe she did and pretended not to. That had always been her skill, strategic ignorance. By evening, the sound of laughter echoed from downstairs. Kelsey's voice rang out like a bell. Mrs. Carter, I swear, your soup is better than the ones at that fancy restaurant. Olivia laughed, warm and fond. I'm glad someone appreciates it. Lila barely touches dinner these days. I didn't go down. Instead, I quietly opened my study planner and rewrote my schedule. My new life would not be built on defending myself every hour. It would be built on results. I'm getting out. My hand paused as I flipped past an old photo taped to the inside cover. Blake and I, smiling after a debate competition. I had helped him write every one of his arguments, pushed him to place first. But the prize money had gone to Kelsey's hospital bills. He never told me. I peeled the photo off and dropped it in the trash. The next day, Olivia stood at the kitchen table holding a small envelope. Lila, we need to discuss something, she said carefully. I set my pen down. Yes. The engagement banquet. Your father made a pact with Blake's father years ago, and with the exams coming up, we thought the third day after would be best. My stomach turned. In my last life, I had stood in a lavender gown, watching as Blake didn't even look me in the eye during our engagement toast. I forced a polite smile. Let's wait until Mr. Carter returns. I'm sure he'll want to weigh in. Olivia hesitated, her eyes narrowing slightly. Of course. But you should know. Blake's been helping Kelsey study. Her family's struggling and she lives far from campus. We're just trying to help. Help. That word had been used like a knife against me for years. I nodded. That's very kind of you. Around mid-afternoon, I heard the sound of keys jingling at the front door. Blake's voice floated into the foyer, casual as ever. Mom, I brought a few things from campus. I didn't look up. I didn't need to. I knew what a few things meant. Sure enough, a second set of footsteps followed. Softer, lighter. She chirped. Sorry to intrude again. Blake said you'd love to see me. I stayed in my room and listened. Blake had come home early. Just in time for another performance. That night I cooked one final dinner at the villa. Kelsey sat at my seat. Blake passed her the soup. I didn't serve myself. I didn't speak. And when she said, "Oops, I'm allergic to peanuts," I didn't flinch. She wiped tears as Blake stood and held her shoulder, frowning at me. You could have told us what was in it. I looked up slowly. I didn't know she was coming. Again. He looked confused. Hurt even. You don't like her, do you? No, I said calmly. But that doesn't matter anymore. He blinked. Why not? Because I'm leaving. But I didn't say it yet. Not until I had everything ready. Because you do, I whispered instead. His expression tightened. And I, for the first time in years, felt nothing. Today was the day Kelsey planted the watch and made me a thief. The day she cried so sweetly the world swallowed her lies like sugar. The day Blake looked me in the eyes and chose her. But this time I was ready. I didn't leave my room the next morning. Not out of fear. Out of strategy. I knew what was coming. I had seen it before, felt the sting of it like 1,000 needles across my reputation, my dignity, my name. So when I entered the classroom and saw a familiar glint of metal on my desk, a watch that didn't belong to me, my breath caught only for a second. Not again. But this time I didn't panic. I looked at the watch calmly, then slowly picked it up. It was expensive. Delicate. Clearly staged. Blake, a voice rang out, shaking with panic. My watch is missing. Right on cue. Her bag was open, her expression distressed, and the room had started to buzz. Heads turned. Eyes found me. I saw it this morning, I swear, she said, voice trembling. It was a gift from Blake. And then her gaze met mine. Calculated. I held the watch up, meaning to walk it over, but she moved faster, stepping across the room and slapping my hand so hard the watch clattered to the floor. A hush fell. Then the whispers began. Isn't that Lila Dawson? Did she really steal it? Wasn't she raised by the Carters? I guess being raised by a rich family doesn't change what you really are. I stood frozen, not from shock this time but from the effort it took not to laugh. Not yet. Kelsey dropped to the floor, sobbing. I'm sure she has her reasons. Maybe she was desperate. Maybe she's just stressed about the exam. Her voice was soft. Her eyes were wet. Her innocence wrapped around the truth like a noose. Blake stepped forward, face dark. Lila, he said slowly, you know stealing is a crime. You could go to jail for this. That was it. The final fracture. I turned to him, voice steady. Call the police. The class went silent. What? Call them. If I'm a thief, they'll find out. Kelsey paled instantly. No, please, Blake, she grabbed his arm. Let's not ruin her future. She's just confused. Her friends weren't as merciful. She's jealous of you, Kelsey. Trying to ruin your chances before the exam. That's sick. I let them bark. And then I smiled, slow and sharp, and turned back to Kelsey. Do you need me to remind you how this watch ended up here? Or should I start listing everything else you've lied about? Her face blanched. Blake stepped between us. What the hell is wrong with you? I slapped Kelsey hard across the face. Gasps erupted. Pathetic, I said coldly. You've done this once already. Did you think I wouldn't be ready this time? Lila. Blake yelled. You think I'm afraid of your judgment? I snapped. Go ahead. Check the cameras. Let's see who really touched this desk today. A beat of silence. And then the teacher appeared, drawn by the noise. Principal wants to see all three of you. Now. We were escorted out in silence. I walked ahead of them, shoulders straight, mind calm. As I remembered how this ended last time. And I had made sure it wouldn't end that way again. Not this time. The principal's office smelled like polished wood and sour coffee. A place where futures were quietly buried and reputations shredded behind closed doors. Blake sat stiffly beside Kelsey, whose red-rimmed eyes glistened like she'd been crying nonstop. But her mascara was perfect. I sat across from them, hands folded calmly in my lap. The watch lay on the table between us, gleaming under the fluorescent light like a loaded weapon. No fingerprints. No witnesses. No camera footage. Convenient again. We were told the surveillance cameras were down this morning, the principal said, his voice tight. Ms. Monroe, are you sure this is your watch? Kelsey nodded. Sir. It was a birthday gift from Blake. I've never taken it off, until today. And it was found on Ms. Dawson's desk. Yes, she whispered, sniffing as if it physically pained her to accuse me. Blake remained silent. No defense. No hesitation. Just that same low-level disgust in his eyes I'd seen before. Like he was disappointed in me for letting him down, even when I hadn't done a thing wrong. We have no concrete evidence, the principal finally said, folding his hands. No one is pressing charges? Kelsey turned to Blake as if seeking permission. Then she looked at me. I forgive her, she said so sweetly I almost gagged. We were like sisters once. I don't want this to follow her around forever. Sisters. I smiled. Isn't that generous of you? I murmured. The principal looked relieved. Then that settled. But I do suggest you both maintain distance from now on. These sorts of misunderstandings are best avoided during exam season. Kelsey nodded solemnly. Blake said nothing. I stood and walked out without looking back. That night the dinner table was quiet. Blake pushed rice around his plate. Olivia tried to lighten the mood with talk of university applications. I just ate in silence. Eventually Blake cleared his throat. Emily's upset. She's always upset, I said flatly. He flinched. You didn't have to slap her in front of everyone. It's just a couple days until exams. Couldn't you have let it go? I leaned back in my chair. Let it go. His brows drew together. I know you're under pressure, but what? I asked. But she's fragile? That's your excuse for every little thing she does, Blake. She cries and you roll over like a trained dog. He stood abruptly. You've changed. I tilted my head. No. I've just stopped begging for your approval. His mouth opened but nothing came out. Later that evening I finished packing. Books. Certificates. Every document that had value went into my bag. I didn't take anything that belonged to the Carters. Not even the quilt Olivia gave me when I turned 17. This time I wanted a clean break. I moved back to my childhood apartment. A tiny, dim place in the suburbs that still held the scent of my father's cologne. I stood in the entryway and whispered, Dad, I'm going to get everything back this time. Then I shut the door behind me and left the girl I used to be inside that villa. The next few days passed in a blur of textbooks, mock exams, and midnight coffee. I studied alone. Slept little. Spoke even less. Until one night, just as I was reviewing chemistry equations, there was a knock at the door. I froze. No one ever visited. I opened it slowly and saw him, Blake. Jacket half-zipped. Eyes wild like he hadn't slept in days. Come home, he said softly. Please, Lila. I didn't move. He stepped forward, hands shaking. I know you're mad. But I've been thinking. I miss you. I made a mistake. Let's just. No. His face crumpled. Lila. You let her share your bed while we were engaged. You let her cry on your shoulder while I was being humiliated. And now you want to fix it because your conscience is itchy. He reached for my wrist. I stepped back. Touch me again and you'll lose the hand. He blinked, stunned. Behind me, a file folder sat on my desk. Inside it, proof. Photos. The watch stunt. The moment she slapped it from my hand. All caught from a hidden lens I'd placed above my desk when I moved in. This time I wasn't defenseless. I'm not coming back, I said, quiet but unshakable. And soon no one will believe the story you two built. I closed the door in his face. This time it wasn't rage I felt. It was peace. The night before the entrance exams I triple-checked my alarm, laid out my test documents, and placed my sharpened pencils neatly beside my bag. I was ready. Or so I thought. A faint rustling outside my apartment door made me pause mid-page. I turned off my desk lamp, walked quietly to the entrance and turned the knob. It wouldn't budge. I tried again, harder this time. The sound of metal scraping against metal confirmed what I feared. I was chained in. My door had been latched from the outside. I knew immediately who it was. In my past life I had panicked, screamed for help, cut my hand breaking the window, then then staggered into the exam hall dazed and bleeding. This time I didn't waste a breath on panic. I pulled out my phone and opened the small hidden camera app I'd installed when I first moved in. A slow smile crept onto my face as I watched the grainy footage. Masked in a hoodie, looping a chain through the railing and across the latch like she was tying a ribbon on a gift box. I screen recorded the entire clip. Good. Let her keep digging her grave. I called a locksmith, one I'd prepaid weeks ago for a possible emergency. He arrived in less than 20 minutes, cut through the chain and gave me a small nod. Best of luck on your exam, miss. The next morning, Kelsey arrived at school glowing. Literally glowing. Her hair curled. Her lips glossed. Her laugh louder than usual. I watched from across the courtyard, calm as a breeze, as she leaned into Blake and whispered something while tucking her hand into his arm. She's not coming, she said smugly, loud enough for those around her to hear. Poor Lila's probably too ashamed after what happened. Blake looked conflicted, but not enough to stop her. I didn't walk into the exam hall until the very last second. And I didn't walk into the same room as them. I had requested a different test center in advance. No one knew. Not even Olivia. The exams lasted 3 days. 3 long, grueling, glorious days. I poured everything I had into those pages. My pain. My betrayal. My fire. The weight of 2 lives, both the one they destroyed and the one I rebuilt, bled into every answer I wrote. When the last bell rang, I stood slowly, walked out and disappeared without looking back. I didn't return to the Carter villa. I didn't call Blake. I didn't respond to Olivia's texts. I vanished. The next time I appeared would be on the scoreboard. A week later, the results were released. Blake and Kelsey arrived at the school hand in hand for the celebration banquet, surrounded by friends and fake congratulations. Jason's going to top the class this time, Kelsey said to a news reporter, smiling sweetly. With Lila out of the way, he's finally got a chance. Jason, quiet, smart, and usually unbothered, stared at her flatly. Don't jinx it. Kelsey laughed, oblivious. Oh please. Lila didn't even take the exams. It's your year now. But then the screens lit up. The rankings updated. The crowd fell silent. Number 1. Lila Dawson. Crestfield University. Admitted with honors. Jason blinked. Kelsey's lip trembled. And Blake. Blake stepped back like he'd seen a ghost. She took it, he whispered. Jason looked at him like he was the dumbest man alive. Clearly. But it didn't stop there. Moments later, a second wave of news spread through the school like wildfire. Kelsey Monroe. Detained. Photos flooded the group chats. Kelsey handcuffed outside the school gates, her face drained of color. Someone had submitted footage to the police. Footage of her chaining a student's door shut. My footage. Her final act of sabotage had become her own undoing. She collapsed the moment she saw my ranking. Blake tried to catch her as she fainted. No one else moved. As for me, I watched it all from my old apartment, sipping tea with a blanket over my knees, the acceptance letter to Crestfield open on the table. No spotlight. No explanation. Just the truth finally speaking for itself. Me. I wasn't done yet. Not even close. The fallout hit like an avalanche. By Monday morning, every student, teacher, and parent knew what Kelsey had done. The chain. The planted watch. The camera footage. And most importantly, the name at the top of the entrance exam rankings. My videos circulated of her boasting about Blake, mocking Jason, even hinting that I'd never show up. Combined with the police escort photos, the internet did the rest. Comments flooded in. So the quiet one was the snake? Kelsey Monroe, congratulations on failing at sabotage and the exam. Can we talk about Lila Dawson though? Girl disappeared, took the test, crushed everyone, then exposed a criminal. Icon behavior. Kelsey was bailed out within 24 hours. Courtesy of Blake's family, of course. But by then it didn't matter. She was done. And Blake. He finally heard the truth. Not from me. From her. Apparently, during a late-night conversation with her so-called friends, ones who weren't so loyal now, Kelsey admitted everything. The watch. The chain. The performance. What she hadn't known was that Blake was standing on the stairs above, listening. He confronted her that night. She cried. She begged. She said she was scared of losing him. That she only wanted to protect what they had. He didn't raise his voice. Didn't throw anything. He just stared at her and said, "You've made me hate myself." Then he packed her things into a suitcase and paid her off with what Olivia later described to someone as a severance package. "Don't let me see you again," he told her. It was the only smart thing he'd done in months. I didn't see Blake after that. But I did hear from Olivia. She left a letter in my mailbox at the old apartment. No flowers. No pleading. Just her handwriting on pale blue stationery. "Lila, you've always been stronger than I gave you credit for. And I'm sorry for all the ways I failed to see you clearly. This house is still yours if you ever want it. But I understand if you don't." I folded the note and placed it in a drawer. It didn't make me cry. I'd already cried enough in that house. College life moved fast. Crestfield was tougher than I expected, but I was tougher too. I balanced classes, part-time jobs, and study groups. I stayed in the top percentile of my department. And I avoided distractions. Mostly. Jason made that difficult. He had also gotten into Crestfield. No one was surprised. He'd always been second to me, but just by a sliver. What did surprise me was how often he showed up. Sometimes beside me in class. Sometimes waiting near the library. Sometimes just existing quietly nearby. He never pushed. Never said too much. But I noticed how he always picked the seat beside mine. How he always saved me a chair. How he never asked questions but somehow always had the answers. One afternoon after an economics lecture he fell into step beside me. "You know," he said, "you walk like you're fighting a war." "I am," I replied. He smiled. "Still." I glanced at him. "Aren't you?" He didn't answer. Just walked with me in silence the rest of the way. Rumors spread that Kelsey had transferred out of state. That Blake had withdrawn his application to University B. That he'd been seen alone on campus, quieter, thinner, skipping class. I didn't care. That part of my story had ended. But Blake clearly didn't think so. Because one icy night in January, I found him standing outside the Crestfield campus gate, jacket dusted with snow, holding a red thermos. When he saw me he smiled like I was the one who had vanished. "Lila," he breathed. I kept walking. He followed. "I know I messed up." "Correct. I just want to talk." "I don't." He stepped in front of me, blocking my path. "I didn't know what she was capable of," he said. "I didn't know what she did to you until it was too late." I stared at him. "Are you apologizing?" I said slowly, "because you understand, or because you lost everything?" He flinched. Behind me, footsteps crunched in the snow. I didn't have to turn around to know it was Jason. He stepped up, expression unreadable. "She said no," he told Blake. "Leave." Blake's jaw tightened. "So you're her knight now? You think you're better than me?" Jason didn't blink. "No. I know I am." He took my hand without asking, just certain, and led me past Blake like he wasn't even there. And for the first time in years I didn't look back. I hadn't meant to see him again. But fate has a cruel sense of humor, and it always arrives early when you're ready to shut the door for good. The night of the spring festival fireworks, Jason invited me out. 5 kilometers down by the river, he said, stuffing his hands into his coat pockets. "I heard they'll be the best show this year. Thought you might want a break from demolishing the academic curve." I almost said no. Then I saw the way he said it, casual but like it mattered to him. And I remembered how many nights he had waited outside class for me, how many library tables he'd silently saved, how he never asked anything from me, but always showed up. So I said yes. I wore a beige coat, wrapped a scarf around my neck, and stuffed my gloves into my bag in case the wind bit harder than usual. But the moment I stepped outside the Crestfield gate I saw him. Blake. Waiting. Like some ghost that refused to be exorcised. His eyes widened when he saw me. He looked thinner. Paler. A little unkempt. But none of it stirred pity in me. "Lila," he breathed, voice trembling as he walked up and pulled me into a hug without permission. I didn't hesitate this time. My knee drove straight into his stomach. He doubled over, wheezing, and I shoved him back. "Don't touch me." He clutched his side, blinking rapidly like he didn't know what just happened. "I'm sorry, he coughed. "I had to see you. I know I don't deserve anything, but I hoped, maybe, that you still cared." I didn't answer. Because in that moment Jason arrived. His boots crunched on the gravel path, his gaze sweeping across the scene like someone assessing damage. He said nothing at first, just stepped between us. "Are you done haunting her?" Jason asked, voice low, calm, deadly. "Because you're starting to look pathetic." Blake straightened slowly, his face twisting. "Are you kidding me, Jason? You think you deserve her?" Jason tilted his head. "And you think you ever did?" Blake's fists clenched. He raised one, but I stepped forward before he could move any further. "Blake," I said, cold and deliberate, "we have nothing to do with each other anymore." The words stopped him mid-breath. He looked at me like I'd taken the last piece of his identity. "Lila," he whispered, "if I had known you were going to walk away, if I'd known how serious you were, I would have stayed. I would have fought." I gave him a long, steady look. "You had 100 chances," I said. "You didn't just lose me. You discarded me. And now you're sorry because there's nothing left to use." His lips parted, searching for an argument. But I turned my back on him and reached for Jason's hand. He didn't hesitate. His fingers found mine, steady and warm. We walked away, no tears, no speeches, no turning back. Behind us, Blake didn't call my name again. Not once. We reached the bridge just as the first firework exploded in the sky, crimson and gold showering down over the river like falling stars. Jason leaned against the railing, his profile sharp against the flickering sky. "Does this mean what I think it means?" he asked. I smiled faintly, teasing. "What do you think it means?" He turned toward me, voice quieter now. "That you've finally let it go." I didn't reply immediately. Instead, I looked at him, really looked. At the boy who had never taken advantage of my pain. Who never tried to save me with words. Who let me rebuild myself without interruption. Who simply stood still long enough for me to decide if I wanted to stand beside him. Jason pulled a small velvet box from his coat pocket. Not a ring, not yet. But a silver charm shaped like a sword. "I've watched you carry the weight of 2 lives, he said, voice low. "So here's my offer. I'll carry the blade if you let me stand beside you. No promises, no pressure. Just, let me be your peace." I laughed softly, tears springing to my eyes. Not from sadness but from the shocking quiet of safety. I slipped the charm into my palm and nodded. "Then the job is yours," I said. "Boyfriend." Jason's face lit up like a firework all his own. He whispered my name, once then twice, as if tasting it differently now. And under the sparks in the sky, with his fingers wrapped in mine, I knew. The final goodbye Blake never heard was the first hello I finally gave myself. It's strange how quiet the world becomes when you're no longer fighting to be seen. No more proving. No more pleading. No more pretending to belong in places that never made room for you. I woke up the morning after the festival with Jason's charm still resting in my palm. A silver sword no longer mine to carry alone. He didn't text me that morning. He didn't need to. He knew I would show up. And I did. We met at our usual spot under the East Campus oak tree. He had 2 coffees. I had the results of a new scholarship in my hand. We didn't even have to say anything. We just smiled, sat down, and started flipping through the next set of deadlines. No drama. No games. Just the steady rhythm of something real. Meanwhile, word about Blake's decline reached even our professors. Apparently, he never accepted his admission to University B. His family had pulled some strings trying to get him into a private university, but after everything with Kelsey went public, no one wanted to associate with the scandal. He tried to reach out again, once. An email this time. It was long. Rambling. Full of apologies and self-pity. About how lonely he felt. How much he missed the girl who always believed in him. I didn't reply. Because she didn't exist anymore. The girl who waited. The girl who made excuses for his silence. The girl who watched him walk past her with another woman and still asked him what he wanted for dinner. She died the night I walked out of that house with nothing but my father's military plaque and a suitcase full of books. Kelsey, for her part, had become a cautionary tale. The footage I submitted had gone viral beyond our school. It was used as part of a case study on exam sabotage. She had to transfer states under a different name just to enroll again. Someone asked me once if I felt bad for her. "No," I said. "I feel bad for the girl I used to be." And that was true. Because the saddest part of it all wasn't the betrayal. It was how long I stayed silent after. Jason met my parents' old friends that spring. He didn't bring flowers or charm anyone with rehearsed lines. He just listened, really listened, to stories about my dad's laugh, my mom's favorite poems, the way I used to fall asleep holding a pencil. Afterward, he gave me a single photo in a wooden frame. It was of my father standing in uniform, smiling. Beneath it, Jason had written, "The strength you carry didn't come from the pain. Came from them. And it lives in you." I cried. In his arms. In the safety he'd built with silence and patience. He never asked for more than I could give. But I gave it anyway. Every day a little more. By the time our first year at Crestfield ended, I had published 2 academic papers, won 3 merit scholarships, and saved enough from tutoring to start a non-profit summer program for underprivileged students preparing for exams. Jason became my co-director, after pretending to grumble about it for 3 days, then designing the logo and slogan himself. Our motto: win quietly, and never apologize for getting back up. The last time I saw Blake was by chance. He was sitting alone at a campus cafe downtown, staring into a half-empty cup. His eyes met mine through the glass. He stood, hope blooming on his face like it hadn't already died 1,000 times. But I just gave him a nod. Not cruel. Not kind. Just finished. He didn't come out. He sat back down. And I walked past. Later that night, Jason pulled me onto the rooftop of our dorm. He'd set up a string of soft lights, a thermos of hot chocolate and a blanket. Should I be concerned? I teased. You're really raising the bar on boyfriend behavior. He smirked, sitting cross-legged across from me. Just trying to keep my job. I sipped the chocolate. You're doing all right. He leaned in. I want to ask you something. Something real. I nodded, heart suddenly racing. He pulled out a small notebook. Our notebook. The one we used for ideas, quotes, scholarship planning. But tonight he turned to the last page. At the top he had written, "Will you write your future with me?" I looked up. There was no ring. No spotlight. No crowd. Just Jason. The boy who stood beside me when everyone else stepped away. Yes, I whispered. And for the first time in both my lives I knew. This ending didn't need vengeance. It didn't need noise. It just needed me to choose something better. And I did.